Last night, District 1 officers Sean Lesnjak and Paul Bjorkquist were flagged down right here at this location to North Water Street and State Street by a man who was reporting that an intoxicated woman had fallen into the Milwaukee River. Officers Alexander Ayala quickly joined the officers, and they came to this location right behind us, and looking down into the river, they could see a woman holding on to a metal ladder that extended from the side of the pier into the river. Officers Lesnjak and Ayala climbed down the ladder and entered the water alongside the woman in an attempt to extract her while holding her head above water. Officer Bjorkquist also joined them, trying to hold his two partners up who were trying to hold the woman. The officers were unable to lift her out of the water at that time as the water continued to rise and she lost consciousness. Officers Lesnjak and Ayala held her head above water while they awaited the arrival of the Milwaukee Fire Department. Sergeant Daniel Javitt and Officer Corey Crows also crossed over the safety rail behind us in order to join in attempts to hold the two officers in the water and the woman in the water, hold them up above the rising tide level and await further assistance. Officers Lesnjak and Ayala were in the water for a total of 17 minutes. Upon the arrival of the Milwaukee Fire Department was able to extend a ladder into the water, which the officers were able to grasp and pull themselves and the woman out of the water. It was a remarkably courageous act on their part. You saw the shape of the river last night. It was a torrential rain, and the river itself was a torrent. The woman was, as I say, intoxicated and then unconscious, so she was essentially dead weight as they tried to hold on to her, fighting the current, fighting the weight of gravity, fighting the pull of the water, and awaiting assistance. We're very proud of their work, and we commend their efforts to you today. I also want to use this moment to make a couple of announcements that you may want to pass on to your news anchors tonight. Obviously, I'm grateful for the great cooperation last night between the police department and the fire department. Last night we had 453 calls for weather-related assignments between 5 p.m. and midnight. We had 34 crimes overnight, which is about half the average of what we normally have. On another note, we're asking people to please avoid the following locations. We're getting a lot of tourists. They're putting themselves at risks, and they're inadvertently interfering with our recovery efforts. We're asking people to stay away from the area of Sherman and Congress. There's a car in the creek there. A large number of onlookers are in the area, and it's consuming our resources to keep them from falling into the river. So please avoid that location. Secondly, we're asking people to please avoid the area of 19th and Eggert. The basements of several homes collapsed at that location. It's a mess, but we need maximum room to do, again, recovery efforts. The cars and the crowds do not help us. Finally, the sinkhole at Oakland at North that we all know so much about. There have been a large number of onlookers there. I would please ask you all to have them watch your fine television stations. The view is much better on your TV station. You've got much better camera angles. Please tell them to stay away from the location. Again, they're interfering with an extraordinary amount of work that's got to be done there between the fire department, DPW primarily, We Energies, plus the police department is doing crowd and traffic controls. So I'm comfortable plugging all of your channels. I'll do them individually if you want. Chief Flynn says watch channel, fill in the blank. But we would really appreciate if those three locations would be shared with your viewers and ask them to stay away. Now, what we can do now, and I don't want to do your job for you, but I mean, I suspect you'd rather just talk to the officers individually rather than me field questions. So why don't we do that, and you can decide how to make use of them. I'll introduce them again. This is Sergeant Javitt, Officer Crows, Officer Bjorkquist, Officer Ayala, and Officer Lesnjak, and they are the ones who were involved in the event last night. Ayala and Lesnjak were in the water, right? Correct. Officer Bjorkquist, this sounds a little bit like a Dr. Seuss thing. Officer Bjorkquist was pulling the two of them up, and Officer Crow and Sergeant Ayala came and also climbed over the fence in order to stabilize Officer Bjorkquist, stabilizing them. interesting little bit of business. We don't know which tour boat, but one of them last night provided some life jackets that we were able to put on the people in the water, which certainly aided our efforts. We thank them, but I don't know who they were. And as I say, the fire department ultimately came with a ladder that they were able to climb up out of. So,
Officer Ayala, if you could tell us what it was like in the water, step up to the microphone.
Well, the current was picking up after we were in the water. It was very hard, and it was trying to push us under the walkway. Obviously, we're trying to keep afloat, try to get the victim afloat, and that was our main priority. Also, my partner in the water too. That was a priority of mine. It was scary, but that's our duty. That's what we do.
Officer Lesnjak, if you could step up and you could tell us, you're saving a woman who was intoxicated, basically, as the chief said, dead weight. What is that like to try and support her while you're trying to keep yourself afloat? If you could just step in front of the lens there.
It was extremely difficult. The level of water rose to a level where we only had about one rung left on the ladder and off the pier behind me. She was going in and out of consciousness. She started holding onto the ladder, started letting go. At times the current would pick up. It was very, very difficult to hold her weight up. Officer Ayala assisted me greatly when he got in the water. We were both able to kind of create a circle around her and hold her up against the ladder until more help arrived.
Officer Bjorkquist?
Bjorkquist.
How long were you supporting these two officers?
I'm going to estimate that it was somewhere around 15 minutes to about 17 minutes. They both had when they both went in the water, they both had a pretty good hold on her. And even though she was going in and out of consciousness, I was really I was concerned for their safety, but I was also pretty sure we were going to get her out of the water. My concern was getting them out of the water safely also. I could see that it was very exhausting for both of them because the current was quite strong last night. In fact, it was very strong last night. So I was very worried for their safety also.
Officer Crows, if you could talk about, were you concerned at any point that you were going to lose everybody here? I mean, you guys were supporting their efforts.
The current was pretty strong, and at times it seemed the river was rising while my fellow officers were holding on to this lady. And it got tense at a few moments as the river picked up speed, and you could feel the river pull against the rope, and they were fighting to keep her afloat.
Sergeant, if we could have you step up and, obviously we had a successful situation, successful outcome here. Just your thoughts about what a crazy night it was for you guys.
Well, it was very crazy with the amount of rain and all the situations happening. I'm very proud of the officers. They did a fantastic job. Citizens that helped us, the Milwaukee Fire Department, we're all alive to talk about it and very proud.